As a university professor for 30 years, I've seen lots of changes in the attitudes of students and the way college-produced notions have entered the public's marketplace of ideas. Few topics of discussion in college break rooms have reached the pervasiveness of race and gender as they play themselves out in the streets and in the halls of commerce and the government. But they're discussed from a pathological or deadly perspective. It should come as no surprise to anyone that when the political left gets a hold of an idea, it quickly gravitates to two of Karl Marx's greatest concepts, inequality and oppression. On today's Vantage Point, I want to look at the historical roles played by men and women, but this time I'm going to use a functionalist perspective to contrast against the pathological view of Marx's conflict perspective that has come to dominate the political discourse in the West. This promises to be a hot topic for discussion, so I hope you'll join me. It seems to me that the issue today is not about ensuring equality of opportunity. It's more about the redistribution of wealth to ensure equal outcomes. An important fact that college instruction often leaves out is that no one asks self-directing, free-thinking adults if they want to work hard and sacrifice so that people who did not work hard and make self-sacrifices can enjoy the fruits of their labors. Clearly, if we phrase it like that, it indeed sounds unfair, but why is it so popular among certain groups of people? The left employs rhetoric and distorted facts to make some of us feel guilty and ashamed of our so-called privilege. This, they reckon, will coerce us into not resisting their policies because in the past people did resist. Between 1917 and 1977, over 100 million people living on all continents besides Antarctica and Australia did resist their policies and were killed by their own governments. In terms of evil, communist or leftist oppression can make the run-of-the-mill Nazi look like a choir boy. Keep in mind that Marx came up with his concepts of communism before there were theories about personalities, aptitudes, and multiple intelligences. Marxism and socialism offer very simplistic views of economic and social worlds. We might be equal with respect to the application of laws and in the eyes of God, but we are not equally gifted or talented or motivated. Folks, there are few Elon Musk types running around the country. Merit and commitment must be free and rewarded because all of us benefit from creative minds. That situation is called meritocracy. Some people are born takers and manipulators while others are internally motivated to serve their communities or seek answers to deep-seated problems, needs, or wants. We're not the same in what motivates and moves us, nor are we equally endowed to dribble basketball or to think abstractly. We're just not equal in terms of our talents and abilities. So why would we expect outcomes to be the same? In a free society or an environment, we will form hierarchies of power and influence. Now here's a kicker. The freer a society is, the more differences we will see in the products of our labor. When leftists came to power, history has shown that the outcome was not good because they were motivated to change and control others, all in the name of eliminating so-called inequalities. In the years before 1850, let's say, there were plenty of explanations for why people lived in impoverished conditions, but until they were exposed to Karl Marx's ideas, few people had heard of the concept of inequality. That point handily downplays personal responsibility and points to some other group as being responsible for the lack of one's personal accomplishments. This message resonates with some of us because of the concept called relative deprivation. It argues that when people see that they are behind another group or a people, they can feel deprived. Otherwise, they may not know that they were short on goods. Now folks, I was born in a house that didn't have running water or a bathroom, but I have warm memories of being loved by my maternal grandparents. I was blessed in many ways, and for those blessings, I'm truly grateful. Now, I've discovered over the years that happiness is not found in titles, careers, clothes, or the latest iPhone. Communist and socialist ideas are stronger now than ever in the West, but their proponents have dressed up the concepts to make them less threatening. Rest assured that whenever you hear someone call for social justice, economic justice, or environmental justice, they're showing their acceptance of Marxist concepts. We must move beyond what the left calls equality and realize that what we are really hearing is nothing more than old communist wine in new bottles. Nonetheless, Many of their devotees are dedicated to their cause. Why else would they lay down in a major roadway to block semi-trucks to protest the use of petroleum products? If they were willing to risk their own lives, don't think for a second that they will not risk your life. They're not your friends. I deliberately chose to use a leftist concept to name this section of my talk. Gender awareness is presented in schools as a new concept. In truth, humans have been experiencing gender since our first parents were conceived. And who conceived them? That's a good question. Nonetheless, we have allowed academics with a Marxist bent to dominate the discussion when we should have insisted on at least hearing about gender from a functionalist perspective. Marxism offers a pathological view of the relationship between men and women. Why would I say something like that and risk being canceled? Well, it's because it's worth telling the truth. Because Marxism downplays the truth of how our ancestors struggled against life-threatening disasters and our own feebleness and susceptibility to dying an untimely death. We should know that traditional gender roles formed thousands of years ago as a matter of survival. They served a function. So, let's look at that thought for just a second. With respect to gender roles in ancient and medieval times, science tells us that mitochondrial DNA, passed through the female line, was more geographically dispersed than men's Y chromosomes. This tells us that conquerors often killed rival men and kept as concubine and wives the women they captured. Because of that situation, women were encouraged to stay close to camp or village because marauding men from other tribes were looking for female captives. It was not a pleasant time to be a woman or a man for that matter. Life expectancy in the Near East was less than 35 years for women and 25 years for men. The ancients knew that the safety of women was of paramount importance. Just think about the reproductive capability of a tribe if its women were kidnapped. The statement, "women and children first," was not a chivalrous statement. It was about the survival of the family and tribe. A village with 100 women and 1 man can have up to 100 babies per year, but a village with 100 men and no women is doomed. It will die off. There's a strong argument to make that humans are naturally concerned about passing one's genes on to the next generation. That's a topic that I discussed in a video on sociobiology. At any rate, ancient women were kept far away from predators, including men from other groups, because they would kill, eat, or kidnap them. This meant that women were safer near the campsite. Women's involvement with child rearing included 3 years spent carrying the baby in the womb as well as breastfeeding for a couple of years. Now that baby was in the womb for 3 years, but added together it was 3 years. Along the way, they became proficient in securing the home area while men went on hunts. People faced a tough life, so they lived in families for care and protection. Despite how Hollywood panders to the equity crowd by showing a 5'4", 110-pound woman beating a man to death, that was not the way things happened. In typical fashion, young women married men for protection as much as anything else. Looking at that situation with modern eyes suggests that men were mean to women, but it served an important survival function at the time. Many cultural traditions were built on that understanding of life. When women went to work outside the home in the early 1900s, gender relationships and marriage began to take on another dynamic. It was then centered around economic cooperation. Here's something you don't hear very often in the popular media. The freer a society is, the more different people are from each other. In Scandinavia, for example, more has been done to make the sexes equal in opportunity than most countries. Nonetheless, people of both genders are choosing from a plethora of careers. To the surprise of most observers, there are more pronounced gender employment patterns in Scandinavian industries than one would reasonably expect from a developed country. More men are choosing the STEM fields while women choose people-focused careers like the healthcare professions and education. It looks like we are hardwired to serve a host of functions in our lifetimes, and sex is one of the factors. If we allow the social engineers to create equality of genders in STEM and medical fields, someone will be cheated because the best person may not be hired and fewer people will be happy in the workplace. Using terms like economic inequalities and disparities and applying them to colonial America or any other time in history and place in history is not fair to people who never read Marx. It shows a misunderstanding of how people saw wealth and poverty in earlier times. They had their own understanding of that aspect of life, and much of that responsibility to attain it was laid at the feet of the individual. It was a dog-eat-dog world, and it remains so. At the end of the day, I think there are some important notions to leave with you. In a land replete with freedom, there will be more inequalities than there are in a controlled society. That's because people are not equally endowed with talents, personalities, and work ethic. Knowing these things, Jesus said the poor will always be with you, Mark 14:7. At the end of the day, I hope to never live in a country that demands equality of outcomes because it defies human nature and has led to the murders of millions of people. I hope this talk made you do some thinking. So, thanks for joining me. Until I see you again, may the good Lord bless and keep you. May He make His face shine on you and give you peace. Bye-bye.